"This pass looks fake. And you? You don't look like VIP material. Step aside." Thomas Ashton stood there, a man in his late 60s, his face etched with lines that spoke of experience, not of privilege. He wore a simple, well-worn collared shirt and clean denim jeans. He was not one for fancy clothes or drawing attention to himself. Tonight, he had hoped for a quiet evening, a chance to enjoy some music. He clutched the paper ticket in his hand. It was an invitation to a special military appreciation concert. His old unit, the one he had served with for so many years, had sent it to him. It was their way of saying thank you, a small gesture for a lifetime of dedication. The ticket felt a little soft from being carried in his wallet, a wallet that also held a faded photograph of his team and a small, almost forgotten laminated card. On that card was a single phone number, one he sincerely hoped he would never need to use. Thomas had given 30 years of his life to the service. He had seen corners of the world most people only read about in books. He had faced challenges that would make most people quail. But tonight, all he wanted was to be Thomas Ashton, a man enjoying a concert. The young man blocking his way to the VIP section had a shiny badge pinned to his chest. "Liam, Event Supervisor," it read. Liam's hair was slicked back, and his eyes scanned Thomas with open disapproval, lingering on his plain clothes. Liam had already snatched the ticket from Thomas's grasp. His voice was loud, unnecessarily so, and it carried to the other people waiting patiently in line. They turned to stare. Thomas felt a familiar heat rise in his cheeks, the unwelcome blush of public embarrassment. "Excuse me, young man," Thomas said. His voice was naturally quiet, but it held a core of firmness that had commanded respect in much tougher situations than this. "That ticket is perfectly genuine. It was issued by the concert organizers themselves. Perhaps you could check your official guest list." Liam let out a short, unpleasant laugh. "My list?" he sneered, puffing out his chest a little. "I am the list around here, old-timer. This piece of paper," he waved Thomas's ticket dismissively, "is probably something you printed off the internet this afternoon. We get your kind trying to sneak in all the time." He crumpled the edge of the ticket slightly in his hand. "Now, I suggest you move along before I have to call security to escort you out. We don't want a scene, do we?" A deep ache settled in Thomas's chest. It wasn't raw anger, not yet. It was a heavy sadness, a weariness. After everything he had done, everything he had sacrificed, to be treated like a common cheat, a nobody trying to steal a moment of enjoyment, it was a bitter pill to swallow. He thought of the men and women he had served alongside, the ones who couldn't be here tonight, the ones who had given far more than he. He felt he owed it to them, if not to himself, to see this through with dignity. If you believe our veterans deserve honor and respect, not suspicion, type "Respect our vets" in the comments below. Thomas considered his options. He could simply turn around and walk away, go home, let the insult pass. The thought was tempting, or he could demand to speak to Liam's superior. But looking at Liam's smug, self-satisfied face, Thomas suspected the young man would simply lie or make the situation worse. Then his mind went to the small laminated card tucked away in his wallet, the card General Davies had pressed into his hand on the day of his retirement ceremony. "Anything, Sergeant Major?" The general had said, his eyes sincere. "Anything at all, you call this number." Thomas had tucked it away, thinking it was a kind gesture he would never need. He had been wrong. Stepping a few feet away from the velvet rope and Liam's watchful, disdainful gaze, Thomas pulled out his old, dependable cell phone. It wasn't one of the new, flashy smartphones. It was a simple device that made calls, and that was all he needed. His fingers, steady despite the turmoil inside him, dialed the number from the card. The phone on the other end rang twice, then a gruff, familiar voice answered, "Davies." "General," Thomas said, keeping his voice low and even. "It's Ashton." "Thomas Ashton, sir." He then briefly and very calmly explained the situation he found himself in at the concert hall. He didn't shout, he didn't embellish. He just stated the facts, plain and simple. On the other end of the line, General Davies listened. Thomas couldn't see him, but he could imagine the general's expression shifting from mild surprise at the unexpected call to a deep simmering anger. "Stay right where you are, Sergeant Major," General Davies said, his voice now tight with controlled fury. "I will handle this personally." The line clicked, indicating the general had hung up. Thomas knew that General Davies was a man of his word. He also knew the general could move mountains when he was motivated, and right now, Thomas suspected the general was very motivated. Davies likely made 2 more calls, very quickly, to people who could make things happen. Thomas slipped his phone back into his pocket. He stood quietly to one side, observing Liam, who was now preening, clearly enjoying the small amount of power he wielded at the VIP entrance. Liam occasionally glanced over at Thomas, a smirk playing on his lips, undoubtedly thinking he had successfully seen off another troublemaker. A few minutes ticked by. To Thomas, they felt like an eternity. Then, a different kind of energy rippled through the entrance area of the concert venue. 2 sleek black cars, the kind that usually carried important people, pulled up to the curb. They didn't use sirens, but their official-looking lights flashed briefly. Several men in expensive-looking dark suits emerged, moving with an air of urgency. And with them, one man in a full military dress uniform. The rank insignia on his shoulders was unmistakable, a major general. They strode directly and purposefully towards the VIP entrance. Liam saw them approaching. Initially, he puffed up his chest, perhaps intending to challenge them or impress them with his authority, but then his eyes fixed on the stars adorning the Major General's uniform. All the color drained from Liam's face. He suddenly looked very young and very scared. The Major General, flanked by a man who looked very much like the venue owner, and another who was clearly the concert promoter, walked straight past the velvet rope, directly to where Thomas Ashton stood. Sergeant Major Ashton, the Major General's voice boomed, rich and resonant. He snapped a crisp, perfect salute. "It is an honor to see you here tonight. We were informed there was some confusion regarding your entry." His eyes flicked, just for a second, towards the now trembling Liam. The venue owner, a portly man who was visibly sweating, rushed forward. "Sergeant Major Ashton, I am so terribly, terribly sorry." He stammered, his face a mask of apology and concern. "This entire situation is completely unacceptable, unforgivable." Liam looked as if he might actually collapse. He just stood there, mouth agape, frozen. The concert promoter quickly produced a brand new gold-trimmed VIP lanyard. "This man," the Major General declared, his voice dropping to an icy, dangerous tone as he turned his piercing gaze directly onto Liam, "is Sergeant Major Thomas Ashton, a highly decorated hero of this nation. He has served this country with unwavering courage and distinction for 3 decades. He has earned more medals for bravery than you probably have days of work experience at this venue." He paused, letting his words sink in, then leaned in slightly towards Liam. "And you," his voice was barely a whisper, yet it cut through the air like a knife. "You accused him of faking a pass. You denied him entry? Have you ever witnessed someone who was so clearly in the wrong finally realize the monumental mistake they've made? Type epic fail if you've seen something like that happen." The venue owner stepped forward again, placing a hand gently on Thomas's arm. "Sergeant Major Ashton," he said, his voice earnest and full of remorse, "on behalf of every single person associated with this venue and this concert, I offer our deepest, most sincere apologies. The behavior of this employee is beyond inexcusable. Please, allow us to personally escort you to the very best seats in the house. It's the least we can do." The concert promoter quickly chimed in. "And not just for tonight, Sergeant Major. Please accept lifetime access to any event held here, for you and your guests. VIP access, naturally. Consider it a very small token of our immense gratitude for your incredible service, and as part of our profound apology for this disgraceful incident." He handed Thomas the new, gleaming VIP pass. The Major General then slowly turned his gaze back to the venue owner. "And this employee, Liam?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm, yet laced with an unmistakable edge of steel. The owner didn't even hesitate. He straightened up, his earlier nervousness replaced by a firm resolve. "Mr. Liam," he said, his voice now steady and loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "your employment here is terminated, effective immediately. Please hand over your badge and your supervisor vest. You will be escorted from the premises right now." Liam's jaw dropped. He fumbled clumsily with his badge, his hands shaking so much he could barely unclip it. He tried to speak, to offer an excuse, perhaps an apology, but no words came out. He just stood there, defeated and humiliated. Furthermore, the venue owner announced, his voice projecting clearly, "We will be implementing mandatory comprehensive respect and sensitivity training for all our event staff, effective next week. There will be a special module focusing on the proper recognition and respectful treatment of our veterans and active service members. Sergeant Major Ashton, your unfortunate experience today will directly lead to significant positive change and ensure this kind of disrespect never, ever happens again on our premises." Thomas, though still feeling the lingering sting of the earlier confrontation, gave a slight nod. "Thank you," he said, his voice quiet as always. He had never sought a fuss, never wanted to be the center of attention. But he was undeniably glad that a clear lesson had been learned, not just for his sake, but for all who had served. He was then personally escorted to a prime seat in the VIP section, a seat with a perfect view of the stage. A few minutes later, General Davies himself arrived and sat beside him, clapping him warmly on the shoulder. At last, Thomas Ashton could relax and enjoy the concert, a musical tribute to the dedication and sacrifice of men and women just like him. The story of what happened that evening, how Sergeant Major Thomas Ashton was initially disrespected, and how Liam, the arrogant young event supervisor, was so swiftly and publicly fired, spread like wildfire. It became a talking point in veteran communities online and offline. The venue followed through, posting a public apology on their website and social media and detailing their new staff training initiatives. Many people commented, praising the swift justice and the company's commitment to making things right. Thomas Ashton himself never boasted about the incident. He was a humble man, and that's how he remained. He was simply content that respect had been affirmed, not just for him personally, but for the dignity of all who wore, or had worn, the uniform. He returned to his quiet life, knowing that sometimes even the most unassuming individual must make a stand for what is right. It's a powerful lesson, isn't it? It reminds us that true importance, true value, isn't measured by the clothes someone wears or the volume of their voice. It's found in their character, in their service to others, and in the quiet dignity of a life lived with honor. We should never be too quick to judge a book by its cover, because we might just find ourselves disrespecting a hero. If you believe that every single veteran deserves our unwavering respect and gratitude, please consider subscribing to our channel for more stories that uplift and inspire. And tell us in the comments, what do you think was the biggest mistake Liam made that night? We'd love to hear your thoughts.